Okay, well, we're going to go and start. We'll see if more wander in. Thanks for coming to this one. You guys have a lot of options, and you could have gone to a much better one, but you're here, so thank you. I'm glad you decided to take the time with me, though. We're going to talk about breaking down the silos a little bit. And I'm excited about that because it's something that has made an impact in my ministry. And so I'm just happy to have a chance to just chat with you guys a little bit about that and see if that might help you in your ministry as well. I'm going to start with a little bit of my context, if my clicker works. A little bit of my context. So I think it was about 5 years ago. I've been in my current call 4.5 years. 5 years ago, I got a call from somebody I'd never met. He said, "Hi, this is Brian Franzen. I'm from Peace with Christ in Aurora, Colorado. We are looking for a senior pastor. Your name showed up on our list. Would you be willing to let your name stand on our list?" And so I said yes. That was kind of my posture at the time. I just said yes and let God look where it went. And so after getting off the call, and by the way, if you're ever calling a pastor and you're not a pastor, this is what pastors do. The second after you call, we Google the church, right? And if you're a pastor, you're shaking your head, we Google the church. And so on the church website and on their Google, I found out some things pretty quickly. I figured out that in a month later, their pastor was retiring. So a month later, their senior pastor was retiring. I did a little more research and I figured out that he had been there 38 years. I did a little more research and figured out that they weren't doing an intentional interim, right? And so I look at my wife and I said, "Yep, not taking that one. That pastor's going to be gone in a year." So I went ahead and interviewed with them. I was very skeptical. I asked a whole lot of questions. And I guess suffice to say that I fell in love with the heart and the soul of these people and their desire to reach people with Jesus. And so fast forward to then November, I said yes to the call. I was installed there as a senior pastor. I never had a desire to be a senior pastor, a senior leader. I always kind of saw myself as an associate. I thought I'd be there for a long time. And I think it really was a great match. And like I said, I should have been done after a year or two. I'm 4.5 years in. They haven't ran me off yet. We'll see if that happens. But I really am blessed by these people. I think the thing, though, that I wasn't ready for in leadership, and I think this is true whether you're a senior leader, whether you're a principal, whether you're kind of in charge and the buck stops with you, whether you're even a lay person. I think this is true for you. That silos do exist in ministry. There is that separation that exists in ministry, and so I think no matter how you are leading, that can be really important for you to understand that there are those silos and then how to break them down. So let's just start with this idea of silos as we get going. What do you know about silos? Because the analogy is going to fall flat if we don't understand silos just a little bit. What do you know about silos?
They're self-contained.
They're self-contained, yeah, absolutely. Bingo.
They hold all of it.
Yeah, they hold all of it. Yeah, very self-contained, they hold all of it. Yeah.
They're very specific.
They're very specific, yeah. So you don't put both corn and wheat in the same silo. Yeah.
Explosive.
What's that?
They're explosive.
Yeah. Yeah, they can be. Absolutely. So the way that I think is going to be really simple for us to think about it is they keep the good in and the bad out. But now the thing that's important about that is that this is relative. This is based on the person who owns the silo, what the good is and what the bad is. So that's going to be really key as we're talking through that what is the good and what is the bad. So again, if you're a farmer and you have a corn silo, anything that's not corn stays out. Right? And in fact, your role as a farmer is to make sure that it stays out. So my grandparents were corn farmers in Nebraska, and they kind of have silos for two different reasons. One was they would use the corn for feed for their animals. And so they could take care of animals. They would have the feed, they'd harvest, and then have feed the whole winter for their animals. And the other thing, though, they would do is they would harvest, and then they'd wait till the corn price went up, and then they would sell. Because if you do that, then you can sell it for more. But it's pretty important that the silo works well. Because if it lets water in, if rats get in, anything like that, it'll ruin your corn price. It'll ruin what you can get for the product that you have. And so I think in ministry, silos come out of, I think, a really good place. I think they come out of a desire to do good in ministry. And I think there's some natural ways that silos actually are just really natural in ministry. I think they just happen by themselves without trying. I think the first is that they're easy in the busy. Right? We call this delegation, right? So we're really busy. Okay, so you're going to take the youth. I'm going to do this. And we just kind of, right? We divide it up. And there's value in that. Like as a pastor, if you have staff, as even a lay volunteer, like if you can delegate out some of the tasks, like there's great value in that. There's great opportunities when you can delegate out. So they're easy and they're busy. And even, I think this is biblical, right? Moses, he was trying to do everything after he led the Israelites out of the promised land. And his father-in-law Jethro said, hey, you need to kind of divide this up. But what silos do is it takes that a little bit farther and says, hey, we were doing it this way, but we're going to kind of separate out. So they're easy and the busy, they're practicality, it's delegation, and so silos kind of form out of that. I think that the second part is really similar too. They appeal to our desire for order. Silos are ordered. Silos say, hey, you take this ministry, I'm going to do this, she's going to do that, and they can be really helpful in that way. So one of my pet peeves, evangelism committees. Does any of your church have evangelism committees? You're on yours, yeah. So I'll tell you my pet peeve about evangelism committees. And and again, I don't know your context, but this is the one that I've been in. So what evangelism committees do, the church says, and it starts at a good place. They say, hey, we need to do evangelism. Right? Let's do evangelism, right? God says to do evangelism. God says to reach the whole world. So let's start an evangelism committee, which sounds great until in a lot of places what the evangelism committee ends up doing is the rest of the church says, well, I don't have to do evangelism because we have an evangelism committee. Right? What have you said? Now again, it started from a good place. It started from a place of, hey, we want to have this order. We want to make sure that nothing gets missed. And evangelism is so crucial. Like that's what the church exists to do. It exists to teach Jesus. So to appeal for order, let's have an evangelism, but then it ends up being this, well, the evangelism committee does evangelism, right? Versus the whole church does. And so really one big difference from a silo and a ministry is a ministry exists to equip everybody in doing it. A silo exists to make sure that it happens within the self-contained bubble. And so that's really a key here. And so so I don't always like an evangelism committee because that's what they end up doing. Hopefully yours is different and doesn't do that, but that's going to be your challenge because the church is going to have this tendency to say, well, you do it. We'll do us, you do you, and we'll all just be good, right? Makes sense. They allow us to look for wins. I think this is one of the reasons why silos are so appealing. They help us to look for wins. Wins are hard right now in ministry. If you're in ministry right now, wins are hard. We're in the midst of a volunteer crisis. Maybe your church isn't, but mine is. We're in the midst of, generally the church is declining, right? They talked about this last week. We see all these kind of challenges. And so I think in ministry, it's hard to find wins. And so sometimes what happens in silos is what we do is we say, well, the church declined, but my youth program is higher numbers than we've ever had. And you see what you did there? Or you say, well, the school's kind of going down in attendance, but in my classroom, I've got better relationships than I've ever had with my students. And so what are you saying when you do that? You're saying, well, the whole ministry might be failing, but my silo is excelling, right? The area where I'm at personally is doing really well. And that's key that we start to do that. And that can be dangerous. That can be challenging, I think, in ministries. And so the big problem with silos is that the individual ministry can exceed at the expense of the whole. Right? When we come down to it, that's the problem with silos, is that if you are in ministry, you don't just want your area to excel. You want the whole ministry to excel. You want your whole church, your whole school, your whole nonprofit. You want it all to excel. And what silos do is they end up putting us in this place where we're just worried about us. Okay, so I don't talk all the time. Any questions at this point? We'll go down to a little bit more of how do you diagnose silos. That's what we're going to next. But any thoughts on silos? And I know it's early. This is the problem with early. You guys are all still waking up.
Well, I noticed that with our board of directors. They're like, well, the preschool has had a 25% growth.
Yeah.
But our DCE left just before the pandemic, and they haven't hired anybody. And they're like, well, the parents could just take that on.
Oh.
And that's been a complete disaster because most of them work. And now we got old people going, well, where's our youth? Why aren't they going to church anymore?
Yeah.
Because they don't see the silo is literally empty.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges too that we and one of the diagnosis of with silos is when one person leaves, does your ministry evaporate? Right? And I think that's a good point. Because why? Because that was their silo. The ministry wasn't integrated into the life of the church. When your ministry is integrated into the life of the church, it's not going to live and die by one person. Now again, a good staff member can make or break a ministry. They're hugely important, but it's not everything. Again, if you got questions as we go through, so a few ways to diagnose silos. The first is me language. If you have staff members, volunteers that are using a lot of me language, me or my nursery or my youth room or my classroom, right? I walked into one of my teachers' classrooms the other day to teach Bible class, and it said, if you move my podium, put it back. Now, again, that doesn't seem like a big deal because it's her classroom, right? But we've got to change that language. There's no such thing as my, not in God's church, right? It's His church, not my church. There's not my room. Even my office, and I brag on this, my office is the counting room, and it was the conference room until just very recently. Our whole building is shared. And so that value of understanding that a space isn't mine is really, really huge. We'll talk about that, but watch for that among your ministry. It's a really big sign that there's some silos when people are using this idea of me. Now again, it's natural. I'll say it again, it's actually proper English to say that, right? It is. It's just not how we should talk and behave. Because generally, me language isn't just language, it's a state of mind. You're saying, hey, this is mine. Now this is key. This is mine, and everything will be just fine if you just stay out. Right? That's what you're really saying a lot of times when we use the me language. What are we saying again? And this is key. We're saying I'm going to keep the good in. If you leave my classroom alone, I'm going to be just fine. I'm going to keep my good in because I'm doing great for this organization, but everybody else is what? They're just messing me up. Right? Yeah. And this is why there's a big problem with this me language. And I know it's just words, but words are highly, highly important. And so you got to get rid of that idea of me language. Second point, lockout. So when it's still the way, I need to change it eventually, but keys are expensive. It takes me 4 different keys to get from the front door to my office. 4 different keys. Now, that's too many keys to carry around, A. And B, when something like that exists in your building, you have to ask why. Why? Because what it does is creates this environment in our office, and I kid you not, where we trust our teachers to work with our kids, but we don't trust them to have the key to the inner office. Isn't that ridiculous? We trust them with our most precious commodity, right? The children that are coming to our school, but we don't trust them to get into the office. Now, again, this might seem like a simple thing. Well, that's just keys. That's not a big deal. But it's actually about how problems were solved. See, instead of dealing with culture, instead of saying, hey, if you come into this office, and this is what I guess it is, if you come into this office, don't use this copier, you can use this copier. Or if you come into the office, please don't mess with the office supplies. Instead of working on that culture, they decide, well, the teachers are messing with everything, so we're going to lock them out. We're going to change the lock on this door, right? And what do? See, now this is, I know it might seem frivolous or silly, but what are we doing? We're saying, hey, this is good. The church office is good, but we got to keep the bad out. And who are the bad? It's other people. We're in ministry, and other people are the bad, really? And see, this is why you have to work on culture and not just make locks. This is why you have to look at culture and not just make locks. And that's, I think, really key. Another place you can look at it is kind of the same idea, is what do you have in your policy manual? If you do have a policy manual, have you ever found those like silly rules in yours? Like teachers can't leave before 4 o'clock on Friday or something silly like that. I don't know if you have that, but some policy manuals do. And when you have those, you have to ask the question, what happened for this to be there? What happened for this to be there? Because there's a lot of times we'll write this policy because we have a cultural problem, not because there needs to be a rule. And so it's the same thing. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, if we just put this fence around people, then we'll fix everything. And so keys, policy manual, it's a good way to put people in boxes, put people in silos, and keep the good in and the bad out. The final one is people-based solutions. If you find people in your organization thinking that the solution is to get rid of this person or get rid of this person, or if this person just started doing this, then we would be just fine. You've got a cultural issue. See, I believe this in ministry, and maybe this is crazy, and maybe this is just naive. Maybe I haven't been in ministry long enough. But I believe generally in ministry, people want to do good. We don't make enough money to be there for the paycheck. I believe generally people want to do good. And so often it's easy in silos to say, hey, my silo's just killing it. But that one over there, that one's kind of nasty and gross, and there's like some mold and rats over there. And so if that person just cleaned up their act, we would be just fine as an organization. And so what are you doing when you do that? You're focusing on people and thinking that if they just change, when probably the problem is your whole organization. Possibly part of the problem is, yes, your silo is excelling. You're doing really well. But you're actually affecting the ministry negatively, right? Because your good silo is actually affecting the whole in a negative environment. Now, again, I'm not saying that you're not doing some good stuff, but you're actually affecting the culture, yeah?
I was just saying with lockout, it also requires permission. You need to go to the right people to get permission to do that, and they will decide whether you are allowed there or not. It's a huge power play.
Yeah, and it's simple, right? It's really simple to do that because you throw a key on the lock and you're good to go, right? Yeah. Yep. And again, we'll talk about fences here in a minute. We've had to learn this, but yeah, fences are good, silos are bad. But so we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Yeah. Any other questions before we go on? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, yeah.
I was just saying, I experienced the lockout stuff.
Okay.
Quite frequently.
Yep.
Context. So.
Yeah. Yeah, the amount of keys we have in our building is just atrocious.
Yeah, I'm an associate pastor. I should be able to get to anything, everywhere.
Yeah.
Without having to go to the office to go get the other key.
Yeah. Yeah, but somewhere along the line they had somebody that they couldn't let into some room, and so they had to lock the door. When really, if you have somebody that's wreaking havoc on a room, that's a culture issue. That's not a key issue. But again, we choose to fix things sometimes the easy way in ministry. So a few notes just in case you're not the senior leader, because as a senior leader, at the end of the day, culture is your responsibility. If you're leading, culture is your responsibility. In fact, I would argue that as a leader, it's your biggest responsibility. It's not just something that you get to delegate off or you get to let other people handle. Culture is your biggest responsibility. And somebody had asked this on the chat before, so I want to make sure. So if you're a second chair leader or if you're a volunteer, like what role do you play in culture? Because you don't get to have the same necessarily effect you don't get to necessarily have the same effect on it, but you do have an impact on culture. So I think one is that invite to challenge. Like, invite your senior leader to challenge you on culture. Tell them, hey, when you see something that's not right in the culture, would you tell me about it? Sometimes as a senior leader, we don't like to bother people. There's enough other stuff going on, so we don't always like to say, hey, you need to do this better. But I think if your staff can invite you to say, hey, let me know when something's off. So if that's you, if you're a lay volunteer, whatever it is, invite your leader to challenge you on the culture. Share with them that you think that's important. The other thing is that remember that you have a part of the ministry. Whether you're on a team, whether you're second chair leader, whatever you do in your ministry, that you do have a part of the ministry. And so you can change that part of your culture. So that's always where you start. Because if you're here, my guess is you're not here by accident. You're here because you actually lead people. So how can you affect the culture? So I use an HMO. Our medical care comes through an HMO called Kaiser. We actually, as a family, we've really liked Kaiser. We've heard bad things about it before, but we've really liked it, with one exception. If you ever call Kaiser, the people you call are very, very rude. Very, very rude. And it's so weird that in Kaiser, like, there's this rude part of their culture, and then you go into the doctor's office, and they're some of the friendliest, nicest people you've ever met. But in this big organization, there's two different cultures. There's a rude part of their culture and just a super nice part of their culture. And my guess is because the leaders of those two different parts of that organization, they're leading with different culture. And so you in your ministry, if your culture is if it is challenging, if it is difficult, if it is segmented, how do you make your part of your ministry team together and work together? So maybe you've been put in a silo, but does your silo have multiple silos? So the silo that you're called to lead, maybe your senior pastor has put you in a silo and that's where you are, and for better or worse, that's where your church is, but does your silo have silos, right? This is the area where you're at, because that's where you do get to break down. And again, let your pastor know if you got concerns. I think most of us want the ministry to be as good as it can be. And then, just talk about the expectations you see.
Is there a difference between, I'm trying to, because our pastor likes to let us stay in our own lane.
Okay, yeah.
So is there a difference between silos and...
Yeah, there is a difference, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to fences here in a minute. So if I don't answer that question, make sure and ask it again, because I think it's really, it's a great question, because there is, so there's another problem too, right? So this, and we're not talking about that one, but micromanagement, right? Because that goes too far. If the pastor's involved in everything, he's not doing anything. Right? And so there has to be a balance there, right? And so I like the idea of lanes, or we use the idea of fences around our ministry. Yeah. Okay, so we can talk about a few odd ways to break these down. There might be better ones, but this is some of the things that we have done. The first one is everybody must fight their own battles. So I don't know if you've ever had this happen. Somebody comes to you and they say, Pastor, or whatever your name is, this person is just really getting on my nerves. Like, they're doing this. They have this problem, right? And you can probably fill in the blanks because you've had this conversation. Like, and what do? They put you in a weird position, don't they? Because what are they asking you to do? They're asking you to fix this problem, which, by the way, sounds really good. Like, because we want to do what? We want to fix problems. And when people need us to fix problems in ministry, that makes us happier than anything else. Because we didn't get into ministry just to sit there and do nothing. We got into ministry to help people. So when staff member A or person X comes to your office and says, I've got this problem with this person, what is your natural inclination? It's to fix the problem. Right? And even we can go to Matthew 28 or Matthew 8, no, whatever. We can go to the Bible and say, well, we got to get the two people talking. Right? But even that is actually a problem. Because it's not our job to jump in the middle of the conversation. Because what are we doing? So again, person A here has a problem with person B. They come to pastor, person C, or you, let's just say you. They come to you and they say, we've got a problem with each other. Our silos kind of aren't quite agreeing here. Would you fix this problem? And so then you get them in the room, you talk with them, they work it out. But did they actually work it out? No, they worked it out with your help. And so what did you let them do? You let them stay in their silos. Because they never challenged their silos. They never challenged their mode of operating that's not working together. The reason they're not working together generally is because they're in silos. And person A's ministry is affecting person B. And so what you do is you get out of the middle of it and you let them fight their own battles. You let them fight their own battles. Now this is hard, because it's going to be you reminding the person time after time after time after time that no, I'm not going to solve that for you. You're going to have to talk to them. It's going to be hard, right? Because we don't like to not do anything as leaders. We like to solve the problem, but you're going to have to let them fight their own battles. You're going to have to let them solve their own problem because actually you're not doing anything good. And there's this crazy thing, though, when they actually start to understand themselves. And again, I have this positive view of people in churches. I think they're naturally good people. So when two naturally good people that actually care about your ministry, which I think is generally the case in ministry, when they start talking, they're going to start tearing down their own silos. Because they're going to start realizing that what I'm doing is actually affecting the whole. And they're going to have more care and concern for the whole than they ever thought they would. Okay, so yeah, so make everyone fight their own battles. You got to do that. So, yeah.
What if they won't?
What if they won't? Yeah. Then you leave that on them.
Because, so, couple older generation ladies.
Yeah.
The one has been there forever and has had her fingers in pretty much everything.
Okay.
New person comes in, now takes over LWML and also is working in the kitchen and has taken over that. This person likes it done her way.
Yeah.
As soon as the kitchen, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
So the older person, the longtime member, she kind of stuck her nose where it didn't belong because
Oh, that never happens.
She was president, and then now this other person.
Okay.
So she sent some emails, and really got this other one angry.
Yeah.
And now they're just like this.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's you got to set an expectation that that's not okay. Right? We're Christian. Like, it's not okay to not get along. Right? Like, I think that has to be said.
Is it okay to bring the pastor in on that one? Because if they're not gonna sit down together, it's gonna just be.
If it's so volatile that they can't have a conversation, I think that's a part where a mediator can come in. But that person has to be able to mediate it, not from a place of making the resolution. So what a lot of times will happen is, person A has a problem with person B. Person C comes in and makes the resolution. It's not person A and person B decision. It's the leader saying, this is what we're going to do. And when the leader says, this is what we're going to do with an interpersonal conflict, the leader lets the people stay in their silos. Right? Because basically what he does is, he just kind of redraws the lines of the silos a little bit.
And there's no ownership on that.
Yeah, there's no ownership. If there's not that ownership. So again, if he can do a really good job, there can be a place for him bringing them together at the table. But he has to do a really good job of making them do it. But see, what's probably going to happen is those two people are going to keep coming back to him. So I had two of my staff members had a conflict for a while. And they would both come to me and say, I've got this problem. And I would usually listen, but then I wouldn't do anything. And they probably both got frustrated at me. But you know what they've done? Right, and one of them's in here, and she knows I'm talking about her.
He's 32 years, and the previous pastor managed it. He let us live in our silos. He liked silos, and they worked for that season. But he's absolutely right. I got tired of hearing that it was a cultural issue, and I had to figure it out. And we did. We did.
Yeah.
And we just got done with breakfast a few minutes ago and having a very honest conversation about something.
Good.
And
Yeah.
it's because of that. Now, there's another silo, and that's a little harder, but his response is different because it's a more of a systemic issue. So, and I think we see that, but you have to trust your person, your leader, your pastor. But eventually you get sick of hearing it. Those ladies will eventually get sick of hearing it.
Yeah, and they're going to get sick of not getting along. But I think what generally will happen is they'll both come to the pastor or the leader, or they'll both come to some person, and that person will kind of help them limp along through it. And I think that's what we do. We'll patch it up. So we'll tell person A, it's not that bad. They just have this going on, or they're struggling with this. And we actually undermine the process that we need to have happen. Because we need those two people. They're the only ones that can actually break down that silo. I actually can't break down that silo if two volunteer aren't getting along. Now again, there's times when you'll mediate. I have mediated before. But generally, I personally try not to put myself in that situation. It just doesn't end well if I'm the one making the relationship work, right? Yeah, no, great question. So yeah, everyone must fight their own battles. So my next one, fight some silly battles. So I said, I let everybody fight their battles. Now you got to understand that sometimes as a leader, you are going to have to fight silly battles. So during COVID, we had in our nursery, we had some of our teachers using our nursery bathroom. They were using our nursery bathroom, which is a little weird, but we do have, I'll be honest, we have a bathroom problem. We have we use our facility very well. It's all used very much, but we could have about twice the facility. And so we have one set of bathrooms upstairs, one set downstairs. There's no teacher bathrooms, which is a problem because we kind of have to jump in the bathroom and kind of dodge students. And the bathrooms are also how they change for PE. So it works, but just barely. And so we are trying to get a staff bathroom, but right now we don't. So some of our teachers, they use the nursery bathroom, which is weird because the toilet sits about that far off the ground. So I find it weird. I've never used it, quite honestly, but some of the teachers do. So during COVID, the decision was made that it's not okay for the teachers to use the bathroom because the bathroom's not getting cleaned and it's not safe for the nursery kids to use it, right? Totally reasonable. Right? And so what was decided, get this is how we fix things, we put a lock on it. right? Right, so we put a lock on it. So my staff member comes to me that decides to put the lock on it. She comes to me and she says, hey, I put a lock on it just so you know some of the teachers are kind of mad. And I said, that's not okay. And she's not happy with me for that response. She went through all of it, and I'm like, no, you got a perfectly reasonable explanation as to why the teacher shouldn't be using the bathroom. I think it's odd as well, but we're not putting a lock on it. That's not how we operate. That's not how we function, right? And so, I don't know, we dealt with it for a little while, went back and forth on it. And in the midst of it, I'm like, okay, I've got pastor stuff today to do. Why am I fighting over a silly lock on a nursery bathroom? This is ridiculous. Now, why was I fighting the battle, though? Culture. Yeah, because I'm not fighting about a lock. I'm not fighting the right way to use a bathroom. I'm fighting that people have conversations. Right? I'm fighting that people work together. I'm fighting that people communicate and get along and come to reasonable solutions. And so again, I didn't mediate the discussion. I never sat down with the teachers that were mad at the staff member. I never did any of that. But what I did is I made it clear that this wasn't how we were going to operate. And they solved it. To their credit, they solved it. I think what they decided to do is that the teachers would have a sign-up sheet every day. They would take turns who was cleaning that bathroom so that it would be clean for the evening when nursery was being used. And it worked wonderfully. But again, they had to have a dialogue. They had to have a conversation. And I could have done two things. I could just let the lock go and built up the silos. Or I could have gotten in the midst of it and decided what was going to happen. Right? Because that's my job. I'm the leader, right? If this buck stops with me, I should be able to decide. But I didn't do that. I made them actually solve their battle. But the battle that I fought, and here's where you want to fight the battles. Fight the silly battles when culture is involved. When culture is involved. You want to fight for that culture, and you are going to have to do that. You are going to have to fight for culture. Okay, any questions on this point? So hopefully those don't seem like they're in contrast. So make them fight their battles, but you fight for culture. Questions, comments?
Well, that's kind of like fighting to have them fight their battle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. That's probably said better than I did. Yeah. Yeah, you got to fight to make them fight their battles. Yeah. Yeah. And again, this isn't easy because what it's going to mean sometimes is that you live in some angst. Because you as a senior leader, you as a leader of volunteers, whatever it is, you don't want two people that aren't getting along. That's bad for your ministry. Right? And so it's really easy to jump and solve those right away. But you're actually doing harm long term when you're doing that. Makes sense? So you want to kind of make them solve their own battles. So the last one is you want to find solutions in relationship. And this shouldn't be surprising because we've kind of been talking about that. But how do you find the solution in relationship? How do you find solutions in how you work together and not in your separateness? Right? Because it's easy to find solutions in locks. It's easy to find solutions in saying, that's your job, this is my job. But how do you find your solutions in relationships? Again, a lot of the surface level stuff of our struggles is our building. And so I'm sorry I used so many examples of our building. But another place of contention in our building was our lobby. Our lobby. So the lobby is the church lobby, the school lobby, the ELC, our early learning center lobby. It's kind of everything. And so because of that, it was generally a mess. Not because people didn't care about it, because there was never any way to work together on the lobby. So someone would throw something up, or they would buy something new, or they would do this or that, and the lobby just was, I don't know, it was just a mess, just a chaotic mess. And so one of the things I did is I made it clear who's in charge of the lobby. So one of our staff members, our creative director and office administrator, she's in charge of our lobby. She's good aesthetically, and she's done a great job in the lobby. But it's been 3 years. I kid you not, 3 years of reminding people, don't do anything in that lobby without talking to Nicole. Don't do anything in that lobby without asking her permission. Nicole, if somebody's putting something out there and they didn't talk to you, say something. Now, again, that might seem weird because I just talked about breaking down silos. Why am I talking about now building a system and responsibility? So here's the key difference. When I talk about a system and responsibility, it makes people work together on something. So somebody knows now there's no discussion, how do I put something up in the lobby? What if I want to change in the lobby? Everybody knows where it goes through. They know how the relationship has to work. They know how they have to work together in order to make it happen. So they go to Nicole and they talk to Nicole. If Nicole sees something up that's not supposed to be there, she asks a staff member, what's going on with this? Can we get this changed? And so it's clear that it pushes toward relationship. What is the lobby's relationship with the rest of the staff? How do the staff be a part of what's going on in the lobby? So we want to find those solutions in relationship, find those solutions in our working together. And so sometimes it takes having systems and responsibility to make that happen. And I'll just say this, if you are a leader, if all the system and responsibility, if it's all on your plate, it's not actually a system and responsibility because you can't handle all that. Make sense? So you've got to be able to hand off those systems and responsibilities to people that are better suited for it than you or that have better time or energy than you. Because if you're every system, you actually allow people to do their own thing. Okay. Any questions or comments on that? So this is where we're going to wrap up a little bit of what to build instead. What do we build instead? So any questions, though, before we go on to last slide? Okay. So when we talk about what to build instead, the first thing we want to start out with is more we. It's probably not surprising. Like, how can we change and use more we language over me language? Southwest Airlines is an interesting study. Because if you've ever studied Southwest Airlines, you understand that Southwest Airlines, although they want to make money, although they want to be the favorite airline in the sky, really what they do in their culture is they value the team. They value we. And you can go online to Southwest Airlines, you can look at their kind of corporate vision and values, and it's all littered with this idea of we. We want our company employees to get along. Right? So if Southwest Airlines has figured this out, how much more we as the church, understanding, right? This is simple Christianity. We're the body of Christ. Right? And so how in your ministry, in your organization, can you change as much of your language from me and mine to we and ours? And that really has to be your goal across the board. How can you use we language? And by the way, that's very biblical. I'm not sure you can be a follower of Jesus and not understand that we is of utmost importance. Jesus died for the sins of the whole world, not just for my sins. We are the body of Christ, not individuals. And so we is very important, both from a Christian point of view. So our principal, when I was first there, he had this idea. So we, a lot of times in our ministry, we talk about kind of 3 different parts of it. And for us, there's more parts, but we have 3 major parts of our ministry that kind of function somewhat on their own, but also together. But that would be our church, our school, and our early learning center. And so he proposed, and we did it for a while, it was kind of hard, but he proposed that we stop saying church and school and ELC, which is really hard because like we do function in different ways. There are staff members that are employed by different entities, so it was really hard, but it was a really great exercise to stop saying this and that, but all of us. And so we really tried for a while to say just peace with Christ. And again, how do you say peace with Christ school with that? It was really hard, but we said I forget how we did it, but we had some way that we did it, and I forgot because we stopped doing that because it was just challenging, but it was a good exercise. Like to think about, when are we saying church? When are we saying school? When are you saying Sunday school or youth program or music ministry? Can't you just say peace with Christ? Can't you just say your whole ministry? Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
That was late.
Yeah.
We had the same thing that you had.
Yeah.
We had a school that, we had some of our church members wanted to divorce themselves from the school.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So one of the first things we did was just, we were renamed as Lutheran Ministries.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was your label? I mean,
Yeah, so it's peace with Christ. So generally, we'll just say peace with Christ. And so we'll do that. So for a while, and it's funny, the principal came up with the idea, but he was probably the worst offender. So like for a while, at graduation, it would say Pastor Josh, Senior Pastor, Peace with Christ Lutheran Church. And I told him no. Like, sorry, I'm the pastor of the whole thing. Like, I'm the pastor of Peace with Christ. And so how we use that language is important, right? Because what that signals to the teachers, what that signals to our students, what that signals to our staff is really important. I mean, the same with our principal. Like, I don't introduce him as the principal of Peace with Christ Christian School. And that's a weird thing, too. In Denver, we don't have there's not as many Lutheran schools. They call the Lutheran schools Christian schools. So we're Peace with Christ Lutheran Church and Peace with Christ Christian School, which is why we just say Peace with Christ. But anyway, that's a story for a different day. But yeah, so a lot of times we try to do that. We try to say, no, you're a teacher at Peace with Christ. Or you're one of our DCs at Peace with Christ, versus saying you're part of the school, you're part of the church, right? And so we try to be really careful of that. But yeah, how can our defining position be first to the organization and then to that? Like even I'm a member of Peace with Christ that also happens to serve on the evangelism committee, right? Versus I'm an evangelism committee member at, right? So what do you make that defining mark? My defining mark is that I'm part of this ministry. And this is the area that I'm blessed to be able to serve, right? Even kind of using that language can be really big. And I know language can be silly, right? Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but I don't think it is. I think this idea of how do we talk first about we before I talk about me, right? Because me language has this ability to divide. My youth room, my sanctuary, my office, my whatever it is. Like, just stop. Yeah. Even like my office, I should probably call it pastor's office. Like, that'd probably be the better way to say it. Because at the end of the day, like, there'll be hopefully somebody there after me, right? And it won't be mine anymore. So we got to get away from this idea of me.
That's something that I do with my office.
Yeah.
The place where I work that I spend most of my time in is not necessarily the way that I call. I mean, my name's on the door. But
Yeah.
The thing that I do, I leave my door open.
Yep.
All the time.
Mhm.
And I'm one of the only people in my building. I'm the newest guy too, so
Yeah.
that leaves the door open so that anybody can walk into this office because
Yeah.
it's not really mine.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do the same thing. I rarely lock my office door. If I've got stuff that's confidential, I'll get a different lock to put on it. But yeah, I think there's value in not locking your door. Because what you're saying is hey, if I trust you enough to work with you, then I trust you that you're not going to make a mess out of my office. And just somebody else use it and leave trash behind every once in a while, yeah. But at the end of the day, like, I'll clean up some trash if it means that I have this this idea that I'm signaling not just with how I act, but with the language I use and how I'm treating the church. When I send that message, then I'm giving, I'm telling my staff that I trust them. I trust them not to go through my stuff, or I trust my staff. And again, if I can trust them to work with youth and students and the elderly, then I can trust them with my office. There's nothing that big in there. But yeah, those are big things that we do. And again, it seems little, but it makes a huge difference. The next is to invite in. So in silos, we say, this is mine, I keep the good in, put the bad out. In silos, I actually take another step, I invite in. So how can you come into my area of ministry? And again, this is really big if you're not a senior leader, like to invite your senior leader, hey, do you want to come to this? Now again, I'm not going to come to everything that I get invited to, but I'm going to try. Again, when people invite me, I'm more likely to show up, which is what it is. And so the second grade teacher, every year she talks about her kids with baptism. And again, this is pretty simple, like not rocket science, but she started inviting me, Pastor, after we finish up our baptism, can you talk to the kids for 15 minutes about baptism? Right? Pretty simple. But it took what? It took her inviting me in to be a part of that. And so something I've encouraged all my teachers, I've said, hey, if you want me to be a part of something, let me know. I'm not going to be in your classroom every day. Probably not once a week. If you want me there once a quarter, if it's something silly, if it's something fun, if it's something theological, if there's any way I can help you, let me know. The one I love the most is the 5th graders do an egg drop. And so every year they make little things that keep the eggs safe, and they have to drop it off a building. Guess who got asked to do it? Me. I love that. I love that I have fun. But again, I love that I get to have that fun with them. So I get to climb up on the roof and drop their eggs down, and it's a lot of fun. But again, it takes inviting in, right? And so it takes me saying, hey, I want you to invite me in, and it takes them taking a little more care and planning to make sure and invite me to be a part of that. But I think that's really key, because the more we invite somebody into our silo, into what we're doing, the more those walls break down. And then I have the opportunity to, reciprocate, to invite them to something. And so I know, again, really simple. I'm not sure that's rocket science. I'm not sure any of this is rocket science, by the way. Like, I'm not that brilliant or anything. But I think inviting in can kind of have a big impact on what you're doing. Because again, if we want to break down the silos, if we want to break down this idea that I function well and everyone else is the problem, then I need people to understand more what I'm doing, and I need to more understand what they're doing. And it makes a huge difference. So the last one is common vision. I'm not an expert in setting vision or mission, but it is important. Does your church have vision and mission? Does your ministry have vision and mission? And again, that's the senior leader's job to lead, but it's everybody's job to be a part of it. But do you have common vision and mission? And by the way, as a Christian church, this isn't that hard because Jesus gave it to us. Right? He said, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Jesus gave us his mission. The church doesn't have its own mission. It gets to participate in the mission that God has already given us. But how do you sum that up? Maybe you just roll out Matthew 28 and just throw it up, and that you're good. But how do you embody your mission? How do you explain your mission? One thing I've learned on this has been really helpful, and we've started really hitting this hard, is sometimes the best common vision comes out of a common shared problem. And so we've learned in our community that 50% of people don't know who Jesus is, and 75% of people don't have a church home. Now again, when we start to say that, like, we can rally around that problem. We can rally around that problem, from our ELC to our school to our youth group to our music ministry to everything we do. We can rally around that same mission, that there's so many people living around us that don't know Jesus. And so sometimes a shared vision, it comes out of understanding a shared community. And so if you don't understand what those demographics are in your community, that can be really powerful. Just start sharing that this many people don't know Jesus, right? Because that's what we're all about, right? Yeah.
So our mission statement is sharing Christ's love and mercy with all.
Yeah.
And I have a passion for foreign missions, and I recognize not a lot of people do.
Okay.
And I brought an Indian mission on Kerala province to the elders.
Mm-hmm.
And the elders said, well, we're focusing on in-reach. Let's reach out to our neighbors. Well, 90% of our preschool families are from India. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to support a mission where these people come from?
Yeah.
The elders don't get it. The pastor wants us to support a foreign mission.
Okay.
Evangelism, he says, part of evangelism is you support a foreign mission and you promote that in the church.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to do that. And then I talked with one of the board of directors, and they're like, well, we're focusing on in-reach, and I don't think we have enough people willing to give both to our local in-reach and outreach programs as well as a foreign mission. So I'm kind of at a quandary, like, can we walk and chew gum at the same time?
Yeah.
I mean, do you guys have a foreign mission as well as like a food bank?
Yeah, we have We have 3 foreign missionaries that we support, and we have a feeding program that we go to local schools, and we have a food bank, and other things we do for our community.
So it's a part of, I think it's a culture change to get them to understand. I think you
Yeah.
need people that have it on their heart from the Holy Spirit to reach out to foreign countries, but also
Yeah.
people that want to reach to the homeless neighbor down the street, homeless people.
Yeah, and I would say you're, just speaking to the outside, it sounds like you're in a hard part because it's a hard place to be, because it sounds like you have your pastor's support, but not always your elder's support. And so I think it's up to them to decide, okay, who actually has the say in that.
Right.
Do the elders and pastor need to get together? And so I think that's where you get to go to your pastor and say, I need to know if this is a go, no go. I don't think it's your job necessarily to campaign for it or have sidebar conversations, but to kind of ask for him, hey, I'm willing to do this if I get the green light. Do I need that from you? Do I need that from the board of elders? But yeah, you want, I think that's one that has to be.
Thing to be in is like Jesus told us, it's in Matthew,
Yeah.
28:18 through 20.
Yeah.
And it's like, but they don't want to do that part.
Yeah.
They only want to do the food bank. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yep.
so it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's a hard balance. I grew up in a church that we'd have missionaries in, but we never did anything locally. And so I think, you can go the other way. We like to say Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. Judea, where you are. Samaria, your country. The ends of the earth, other places. And so we have a value of going to all of it. My heart, personally, is for the local community, but we've got other people that balance that out, and so it works well. But I think, it has to be both. Yeah, and that's a hard one. But yeah, I think just making sure you know who has this decision. Because you're never going to have anything you lead, you're never going to have 100% consensus.
I'm thinking if the elders aren't on board, they're going to tell their flock, oh, that mission, I don't
Yeah.
support that. And I don't want.
Yeah, that's not always the case. I would trust your pastor.
Okay.
That's not always your case. You don't need everybody's buy-in. I think if you wait till you have everybody's buy-in, you'll never do it. But you do have to have permission. I think that's important. It's kind of, that is something on the leader to understand how hard he can push the culture. Because it's a culture change, that's what you're talking about. But yeah, again, that's really big for us. We want to call out the problem. And so we're making a real big push to let everybody know in our congregation they're going to get sick of me saying that 50% of people don't know Jesus and 75% don't have a church home. And the other thing I would say is you do it till you're sick of it and then keep doing it. Because I'm already tired of saying that, and I've only done it for 6 months. I had so integrated in my mind that 50% don't know Jesus and 75% don't have a church home, but you just keep saying it because there's something about vision and values that when you have shared language around it, that it really gets into the mind, heart, and hands of the people. And so your job as a leader, whether you're a senior leader, lay leader, whatever it is to really get that mission into the hearts of people. And you're going to pick it up a lot quicker than they will. So it's interesting. I never meant to say this, but one of the phrases I say at the end of every service is you do not go alone. I've been saying it for 4.5 years. I am just absolutely sick. I'm ready to be done saying it. But I have people literally, if I forget to say it one Sunday, they'll come up to me and they're like, Pastor, I don't feel like church was over because you didn't say you do not go alone. Right? I'm the one saying it, so I get sick of it a lot quicker. They're still, I think, okay with it. And we'll retire it at some point. I don't think it's going to last, 38 years or whatever. But, I think, we want to keep saying the same things. There's value. If a phrase has meaning, don't just move away from it. Because what you're doing is you're creating shared language. And again, what does shared language do? Shared language gets us out of our silos to focus on the whole. But it also then infuses the whole into those areas of ministry. So, yep. Good. Okay, what time? I have one more story that we'll end with, but what questions do you have? Did I get to, Paul, did I get to yours on lanes?
You haven't talked fences yet.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened to fences. I had it in my... but fences is this idea. I talked a little bit with the systems and responsibility, like with the lobby. I guess you didn't use fences. So, there's a difference from fences and silos. So fences have gates. Everybody knows where the gate is. I don't know if you've ever done this. I did a door-to-door evangelism for a while, which was kind of weird. I'm not a proponent of it, but that's, again, a different story. But I went up one time to a house that had 2 front doors. It's the most challenging thing ever. Like, where do I knock on the door? There's 2 front doors, right? And I think when there's no gates, when there's no fences, I don't know how to approach someone. Right? I'll use that example of the lobby. If nobody's in charge of the lobby, then there's no entry point into the lobby. There's no way that I can get involved. And so we want to take down the silos, but we do want to build fences. And fences with gates. Right? I'm going to do a gate like that. Right? Because the gate can be opened. The gate can be entered in. The gate is a place that you can access the ministry. And so what's the gate into our youth program? What's our DCE? It works with our youth. Like if somebody wants to do something with the youth, they ask her. And everybody should know that. Why? Because they want to know how to get involved. If there's no fence, there's no gate, there's no way for anybody to be involved. And so I think that's why fences are actually really important, because they make it clear for the ministry, okay, if I want to do something with the youth, who do I ask? Who do I talk to? So fences give us those entry points. And so I think they're really important for that reason.
And they keep it safe.
Yeah.
There's a safety factor
Yeah.
in parts of your ministry.
Yeah. Yeah, and that way I know that at some level, I'm in charge of the whole thing. I'm the senior leader. But I can say that this is in Donna's hands. And I get to say, too, if somebody wants to do something with the youth, I don't make the decision. That's called micromanagement. She does. That's her fence. That's her gate. But I know that I get to enter into it when I want to. That's the difference from fences and silos. Right? And so we want to tear down the silos. Silos say we're going to keep the bad out, the good in. Fences say, hey, come join us. This is how you be a part of it. This is how you be with us. This is how you join us. You come through this gate right here. My DCE gets to be the gatekeeper. But we all get to be involved in it. And so I think that's the value in lanes. And so sometimes when we'll say things like stay in your lane, right, we're saying that's kind of out of your purview. And that's fair, because not everybody gets to have the same impact on the whole. But lanes can be important because they give us, this is what you're in charge of. And they actually empower people too. They say this is what you get to do. This is where you get to have an effect on what's going on within your lane, within your fence. Yeah. Okay. Is that good enough?
That's good.
Okay. Yeah. What else do we have?
So going back a little bit to fighting everyone fights their own battle.
Yeah.
Right. So, in my current context, I can see all of this that's wrong. And my senior, we're gonna have a talk after this. But he's on board. We both recognize the silence.
Oh, good.
We both recognize that.
Good.
He went to something else that he wanted to see, and he sent me here to
Okay.
take the notes.
Good.
The two of us. So I feel like if we have silos, we're at least in the silo together. So there's one individual that's in our ministry team that everyone has the same similar problems with.
Okay.
And so I understand everyone must fight their own battles,
Mhm.
but I'm sensing that I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what your philosophy is and how to apply it to my context. In this situation, because it's gone on for so long and my senior pastor is reasonably new to the situation. He's been here for a couple of years, but he inherited this.
Yeah.
He inherited this situation.
Yeah.
I've been in ministry for a year, so
Yep.
I'm real new to this.
We all started there.
Yeah. So when it's not just silo A and silo B, but it's silos A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H, and A, B, C, D, E, F, G have the same problem with H.
Okay.
How I'm thinking that at that point, when it's multiple years, multiple people, it's a culture thing that then requires senior pastor and myself, in love but in truth, to mediate and work through that situation with those different personalities. And because if I let everyone fight their own battles, then the person in silo H is just going to get beat to a bloody pulp, and I don't want that to happen.
So I think you've got to start breaking down the silos that you have with that person.
Okay.
So you don't tell everybody, you don't tell 10 people, hey, go gang up on them and tell them all the problems you have with them. But also, if you go in and you say, everybody's got a problem with you. But by the way, when anybody tells me, yeah, I was talking to so-and-so, and I'm not going to share their name, but they've got a problem with this, I shut down. Because I'm not going to, if you have a problem with me, come talk to me. Don't tell me somebody else has a problem with me.
We've recently addressed too, is that,
Yeah. Yep.
congregational president comes up, I'm hearing stuff, it's like, well,
Yep. No.
you tell so-and-so to
Yeah.
come talk to me.
Yep. And generally when somebody does that, even when they're a leader, it's actually them. This was their opinions, but they just don't want to own their own opinions. So generally that's how I end up taking that. But yeah, so I think what it is for you is how do you start changing that culture? Because your first responsibility is what is the relationship that I have with that person. So if I have a relationship with a person that's not good, as a senior, as a pastor, as an associate pastor, whatever it is, I've got to fix that relationship. And so I would not release the hounds on this person and send everybody after the silo. I would start working with what's my silo with this person.
Sure.
And so that's where I'd start. And then after you do that, after you can have some success, then you can say, well, I had that same problem with this person. Once we talked about it, we have a better understanding. We have a better working relationship. It's still not perfect, but it's better. Like, I think if you went to talk to this person, it'd work out really well. But you've got to start with you and the relationships you have.
That's fair.
Does it need to be a third party because we go to the same church and I know who they're talking about? I'm best friends with one of those parties.
Yeah.
So I would be the worst person in the world to come in as the mediator. I think
Yeah.
a neutral third party would probably be a better choice, right?
If again you have to, I think if it's that volatile that they need a third party, you may want to get somebody from the outside because that's really bad. So if it's so volatile that two people can't work it out, like that's a big problem. So get, ambassadors of reconciliation or somebody to come in from the outside. I would say even the pastor, like if he's putting himself in that position, he's putting himself in a weird place to try to solve the problems. He may have some experience in that. And so I think there has been pastoral training in that like circuit counselors have had. And that may be a place to look too. But if it is so volatile that
Maybe ask the circuit pastor, is there somebody who's part of the ministry of reconciliation
Yeah.
that you could bring in for us?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, or even, if the circuit pastor comes in to mediate it, that's not somebody within the ministry, that's somebody from the outside that's going to kind of mediate it and then leave. And they're not going to have to be able to have this relationship through someone. Because the last thing you want to do is have a relationship through someone. But if my two staff members, if they start to have a better working relationship, but it's a better working relationship because of me in the middle of it, they don't actually have a relationship, right? And so what I want to do is I want to find these solutions in relationship, not these solutions through another person. Make sense? Yeah, so, and again, I'm not a professional at this. I'm sure there's exceptions, but I would say that you start out, and I'm not sure even in Matthew 18, like that you can bring in a third party before the two have talked together. So I think the first call is the two have to sit down and hash it out. I think we jump way too quickly into mediation. I think we've got to try to work it out ourselves. Again, people have to be challenged. It's not okay to be in ministry and not get along. Like, this is not acceptable. This is not who Christ called us to be. Christ didn't die on the cross so you guys could fight. Like, he's forgiven that, but he didn't die on the cross so you could fight. So stop.
And it's wasting valuable time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hurting your ministry. So,
And as far as, because again, when we have big functions, often some of the people that come to these functions who are guests of the church, they want to help out in the kitchen. And there's some dust up about, well, they don't know where the coffee cups go when they enter the dishwasher. So, again, it's just like, I think that you need almost like a memorandum of understanding as far as like, well, the guests can come and look at the dishwasher but not unload it. You know what I mean? It's just like, do I have to explain that there's going to be boundaries? Yeah, I want people to come in and feel welcome to be in our church and, you know, be in our kitchen and not feel that they're not invited.
Yeah. One, I think those type of conversations are ones we have to have, are ones we have to have. What's our and asking the person questions. I think, what's our value here? Is our value our kitchen? Like, if our value is our kitchen, our pristine kitchen, great. Like, let's make sure we understand that. But I don't think anybody at a church is going to think that your value is your kitchen. Your value isn't keeping staff members out of the office or keeping your bathroom nice for the nursery. Like, that's not your value. So we got to ask our question, what's our value as a church? Our value has got to be reaching people with Jesus. Our value's got to be how do we love our members and remind them of Christ's love. Like, that's got to be our value. And if it's not, then I don't know. I don't know that anybody wants to be at a church where your value is your kitchen, right? And this person knows that, but probably never been asked that question. Yeah. But it's really easy for me to say what's going on there. It's harder in your own culture to, yeah.
How would you say you're going about breaking down silos with a lack of unifying vision? Like, for instance, obviously the Great Commission, but our vision statement is 20 years old, has 5 or 7 sentences that nobody reads, much less memorizes, and there's no, nobody really wants to work to change that.
Okay.
So, we don't have a unifying vision that we call together as an umbrella.
Okay.
Which is partially leading to silos, right?
Yeah. I think, I think the best would be to call it out, to say that, hey, because I believe because of this, because we have an old vision, that it's affecting us going forward. As a leader, I struggle to kind of understand this vision. Ask people, get in a room with people, like church council or whatever, ask them, hey, who knows the whole vision? Because here's the thing, if you don't know your whole vision, if you can't rattle it off like that, it's not doing anything. Vision has got to be carryable. So I would challenge in those ways. I would ask the people on Sunday, if you get that opportunity, who knows our vision? Who can rattle it off right now? And so I'd start challenging in that way. Again, if they're really dead set that it can't change, find phrases in it. Like, if your vision is, we as a church exist to make disciples of all nations and baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? That's kind of long, right? Just start talking about baptism. Make baptism your rallying cry for a while, right? Because as a leader, you get to kind of grab a part of that. Make go, right? That's a part of it. Find a word in there that resonates with you and just start making that a rallying cry. And then find a problem, right? I think that's so key. That was such a light bulb moment when I learned that 6 months ago, that we've got to know the problem, right? Because that's what our vision does, right? Jesus' vision of go and make disciples of all nations, he's addressing a problem. What, right? What's the problem? There's people that are dying that don't know the grace and truth of Jesus, right? And when Jesus said that, there was 140, 160 Christians, right? There was a big problem. This was going to die out in 2 generations if they didn't tell people, right? Or if they didn't have a whole ton of kids, right? And so he saw the problem and he said, hey, because of this problem, we're going to go do this. And so start calling out the problem. Simple demographic study of your town, your city, your community. Who doesn't know Jesus, who doesn't have a church home. That's a huge problem. And then your vision, I think, will have more Again, if it is Christ-centric. Whether it's too long is a different problem. Whether people know it is a different problem. But it'll have more if they see the problem. Yeah, great question. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Any other questions? I think we are actually just about out of time. Not sure how long I'd go. Okay, well, I want to pray for all of you guys in your ministry, and then we'll wrap up. Dear Jesus, we just thank you for this opportunity to just have a discussion. We thank you for the care and concern that you have given us for our ministries. And dear Heavenly Father, we just pray that we would take just at least some little piece of this and be able to apply it to our ministry. That it might lead to good conversations, that it might lead to opportunities, that it might lead to just ways of working better. Dear Heavenly Father, we know that relationships are so important in our ministry. And we pray that this would help all of us. Be with all the individuals that are represented in all the ministries that are represented by people in this room. We pray that you would use them for your glory to reach more people in Jesus. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, say your grandparents were in Nebraska?
Yeah.
Where at?
Creighton, Northeast Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
Not Creighton University. Creighton, yeah. You know that?
I've lived in Norfolk.
Okay, yeah. Yep. I've got a couple cousins that live there now, so. Yep.
Yeah, well, I don't have fond feelings for Creighton. That's because I heard the quarterback.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yep, that would do it. That would do it.
I think I knew this already. Our main struggle there's not a lot of differentiation. Okay. So it's in essence it's stayed, fences, but it's not with direction.
Okay.
I think that might be where we're
Ah. Yeah.
because it's good, because I don't think we shut each other out.
Okay.
I think I can do a better job of inviting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, how long have you been there?
A little over a year.
Okay.
So we were hoping to bring our whole staff here. Minnesota South District has a grant,
Okay.
and we applied to get like 15 other towns to apply for 5 spots.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
So, but I have one other staff member
Oh, cool.
back since.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think, that's just questions that, like, when you ask questions about, what's our vision? Where do you see us going in 5 years? Like, when you can have those conversations with your senior pastor, and just, and ask for clarity, it pushes them to kind of figure it out or think about it. And it tells them, because they may think they're sharing it well or explaining it well, but they may have some room to grow. And so when you can come in not, if you came in and told me, hey, I don't see where you're going, like that I would clam up. But if you came up and asked, hey, I've been here a year, where do you see us going? Like, what does the next 5 years hold for St. John's? Then you get to kind of maybe help him flesh out that vision that he might have, but maybe not articulating as well as he can. Or he doesn't, and then that is like, oh, I haven't thought about that, right?
We have a
So,
similar.
yeah, good luck. Yeah, good to meet you, Paul.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something.
Yeah.
We've got an issue in our church. Our congregation has asked me to be a minister,
Okay. Cool.
and everybody's good with that.
Yeah.
When I was vicar.
However, I'm finding as I
Yes,
listen to
there
you,
were
like,
2
all
elders
kinds
and
of
senior
wonderful
pastor
things are
at the time.
happening.
He was sole pastor.
Our pastor is here, and we are here, and I'm here,
Okay.
I was actually a member of the.
and I am a
yeah,
codependent.
specifically.
Ah, yes. Yes, we could have used that language. Yep.
Line right in there. Like,
Yeah.
I'm codependent.
And
So,
when I was like brand new vicar, like,
and then right at the end, I'm sitting there alone, what did I do?
I was literally.
I felt
was going
like
to orientation
I need to get
to
out of
seminary,
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
With my mentor
Okay.
pastor.
Because
senior pastor. He was discussing with me what he was
these
going to
guys,
have to do in a
these
couple
guys
weeks.
want to
And I was
join
going
with
to
him. He's
orientation
all
to seminary.
me,
And it's like,
mine.
Welcome to ministry.
He's controller, he's new.
This is real.
I'm newer than he is. though.
Okay.
And
been there
we're praying
about 6
and-
months
and,
before.
Okay.
So that's where
Yeah.
we both are in this congregation.
And then
It's
it-
a
of course, it's not
small
going
little
well.
Mexican congregation in
she
Las
didn't
Vegas,
wanna-
Mexico.
Okay.
And they have their ways.
Yep. Yep.
And, which is fine to me. I love what's going on.
Oh, cool.
She didn't take well to it, and she left.
It's like he's from the South.
She went
Okay.
South.
Okay.
So he's all
in
about
Charlotte, we have about
big,
15 Lutheran churches.
glorious, wonderful
So she put
things.
herself in timeout.
And
for
these
the
guys
other.
are just little Mexican farmer guys.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then she comes back
What's he
every once
talking
in a
Yeah.
while for a little bit and then starts to meddle. And
So
then
I've been
goes
trying
out
to
and
work this
goes
out,
again.
and it's not happening.
I understand that.
So, so I don't really know what to do. But you
Yeah.
see, I'm from LA,
Okay.
so you see what all
Yeah.
what's going on here.
Sure.
Yeah.
But these guys are so wonderful. It's not that he's not wonderful. I feel like he just doesn't see it.
Yeah.
But you know, in LA we've got a lot of Mexican people, so I'm familiar with the Mexican culture.
Yeah.
I think more than he is.
Okay. Yeah, and so I think like one thing we do for people is we naturally soften edges. So like when two people aren't getting along, we say, well, they're really doing it because of this. And so if person A isn't getting along with group B, you'll like if you're in the middle, you soften each other. And you make them more relatable, but you actually are subverting the process. Because he needs to hear from them.
I see.
Right.
I'm starting
Yeah.
to get that loud and clear.
Yeah. So it's just it's just a matter of stepping out of that and saying, no, you pastor, you really need to talk to them.
I tried that,
Yeah, and he's not.
and he said, "Oh yeah, and then it's over.
Um,
It's not happening.
Yeah,
It's right now."
so again, I did it for about
Positive steps.
almost 2 years. And in fact, I didn't include this, but I didn't even just have to walk the line. I had to teach others around to walk that same line because there were other people that were doing the same thing. And so I had to have that conversation with other people as well. Because I think people like that, generally, they'll find somebody else.
Say that- What do you mean?
So like if you step out of this,
Yeah.
you're person C.
Right.
If you step out of it, it's possible somebody else is going to step into it too. And so if
I
you,
see them, yeah.
yeah, and because these people will find somebody else. And so it's really being intentional about how do you make sure nobody's between the two. Yeah. Because nobody's going to be able to solve it unless they're talking.
Right.
So,
Right, and he refuses. They have approached him clearly
okay.
a couple times, and I witnessed it.
Yeah.
He turned his back, and he was going to help.
Yeah.
Because I think, in my opinion, he just doesn't understand.
Yeah. Well, and it's easier for him to work through an intermediary, so he would rather do that. And so all you can really control is not being in the middle of it. And so it's just I think it's just getting a phraseology in the line, like, I'm sorry, Pastor, you're going to have to talk to them about that. I'm sorry, guys, you're going to have to talk to Pastor about it, and just put that on autopilot. And it's going to be hard because I think you love both those groups. You love your pastor as you should. You love this, part of your congregation. But you have to understand that the best way to love them isn't to do the easy thing. The easy thing is for you to keep operating there. The good thing is for you to make them talk. So just get that in your mind. You're going to have to talk to them about that. Yeah. Yeah, good luck. It's not easy.
So, because they're going to ask me how do we do that? Because they're willing to do that.
Okay.
And they haven't tried before.
Yeah, Matthew 5:27.
Yeah. Just encourage them not to give up.
I had private conversations with
Go
him.
and be reconciled to them.
And he's all words.
Be reconciled to them.
Yeah.
That's what God wants us to
So far.
do. Because we've been reconciled to Him.
I would make them before you.
How would I teach these guys how to communicate with him? 'Cause I think they have ears to hear. Right now, I feel like he doesn't. I feel like he's overwhelmed, like he's afraid,
And that's
like
where
he's
I'm thinking
feeling
contact is working.
inadequate.
Yeah. So I think your problem though is you still want to fix it. Yeah.
And she said,
Yeah.
These guys out and talk to
Yeah. It's only they can do it. Yeah. No, you're good. It's really hard.
I do love them all.
Because you want people that you love to love each other, and it's a good motive,
I don't know if they would.
but it's a motive that does betray you. You gotta send them, okay, guys, and you just gotta repeat it. You just gotta encourage them. Just go back to them. Keep going back to them. Just encourage them. Don't give up yet.
Okay.
Keep bringing it up.
Okay, I can do that.
The Bible says if your no brother sins against you, you're supposed to forgive him 7 times 77. So I think there has to just be this desire to keep going back. Yeah.
Because they told me Sunday, okay, then we're not gonna do anything now. See, he has called off since November. He has not allowed the congregation to gather at all for anything other than potlucks. And we talk. Of course, they unload. He's not there. He's at another church. He preaches at 2 churches because the second one, he was originally ours. Second one's closing. So
Okay.
he's helping that process.
Yeah.
I get it. However, if we feel like he's turned his back on us, taking all his energy to this, saving this one church.
Yeah. And see, and that's where you can go to him and talk about, Pastor, this is where I'm feeling hurt.
I did.
Right. Okay.
And he said, oh, okay. And
Well, and if he says okay, then if he does it again, go back to him again.
okay,
Right?
okay.
And just be that person.
Should I be that person, or should I I guess that's where I'm now.
So
Should
you
I
don't
let
bring
them know?
their hurt to him, but you can bring your hurt.
Okay, that's
Is
what I
that
was doing.
yeah?
That's what I was
So, because again, if I'm a pastor and you bring somebody else's hurt to me, I'm going to tell you I'm going to listen to you, but I'm going to say, would you please have them come talk to me?
okay.
Right?
So
And
you're not
then
getting that from me.
yeah, and then I'm going to discount you because I don't have big enough shoulders to carry what everybody thinks about me. I only have big enough shoulders to carry what people are willing to bring to me.
Okay.
And so, and I would guess he's trained in the same thing. That's something they train us in.
Okay.
That's pretty crucial because, so you can bring your problems to him. But you don't do anybody any good bringing somebody else's.
Okay. Okay. Then.
Yep. Yeah.
So
It's hard.
They voted me in. Okay.
Yeah.
He was there. I have asked him for.
Thanks for joining.
I have asked him for what they want me to do. I have nothing. I have no paper, no nothing.
Yeah.
And I've asked him several times. He says, yes, I have that, but he's never given it to me.
Yeah.
So that's another place. See, I'm working in the dark.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you can only do what is in your control. And other people's relationships are not in your control.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You told me the same thing on the phone when we were talking about